This is the third attempt at taking Trump's life. It's like this man can rest everywhere except for in peace. The good news is that at least this time, we're not going to see a bunch of his supporters running around with sanitary pads on their ears. What I want you to think about is if you remember any of the names of the shooters, you probably know that John Wilkes Booth shot Lincoln and that Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK, and maybe even that John Hinckley Jr. shot Reagan. But who allegedly shot at Trump? Look, I'd put on my tinfoil hat, but aluminum prices are up because that man started a war with Iran. I want you to look at this though. If ICE will relinquish somebody's life at the possibility of hearing terse words or getting a paper cut, why have two of Trump's gunmen survived? Listen, Trump's poll numbers have been in a free fall. Depending on the poll, his overall approval is between 36 and 31%. So if he plans to run for a third term, or even just prepare for the midterms, he has to get those numbers up, just like he did with Butler, Pennsylvania. I think the election in Hungary probably had a big impact. It probably put all their plans into overdrive, especially considering all the pain this regime is causing all across the globe. Orbán was in power in Hungary for 16 years, but he lost this time because of the voter turnout, because the election was too big to rig. Trump never had to convince his supporters to support him. Right now, maggots think everybody else lacks empathy. Remember, these are the people who believe his misinformation. They trust his poor business skills. They excuse his failed promises. They allow his insider trading and his stock market manipulation. They even justify his tanking of the US economy, let alone the world. They justify him being an international bully. They defend his irrational behavior and then they call it 4D chess. They even overlook his exploits with women and children, but he can't overlook it.
The so-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this, I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President, these are the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead. Let's finish the interview.
Freudian slips are so dangerous. His subconscious revealed things that we already know, and his supporters know it too. And like I said, they have chosen to overlook his abuse of women and children. I want to thank Ground News for partnering with me on this video. It's hard to know what information to trust, and that's why I've been using Ground News. Ground News is an app and a website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have a political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. You can see who funds each publication. You can compare coverage and think critically about the information you consume. You can also access diverse perspectives, get news from sources you otherwise may have missed. I use Ground News to help me find the sources for this video. They're linked in the video description. By comparing headlines and paying attention to the bias of the media outlet, it helps me to see things more clearly. Subscribe to Ground News through the link in the video description to get 40% off the Vantage subscription. That's the one that I use to get unlimited access to every feature. Thanks to everybody who sent me a coffee or a super chat, and welcome to our new subscribers, and welcome back to everybody who's been with me on this journey. I want you to turn on your notifications so that you get my next upload. A lot of what MAGA does comes from behavior passed through the generations. These people say that they love God, and then they burn crosses and burn down churches and attack houses of worship. So, of course, when their patron saint of debauchery says jump, they go ahead and grab a trampoline. Their faith in him is unwavering. The show that was put on at the Correspondents' Dinner wasn't to convince the MAGAs. This was meant to convince the people who sit on the fence politically. This is the first time that Trump has gone to the Correspondents' Dinner since 2011 when he was roasted by Obama.
Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Lil Jon or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
What's wild about that night is that Obama essentially predicted the ballroom that Trump is advocating for.
Well handled, sir. Well handled. Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we got up there.
Why was this Trump's first White House Correspondents' Dinner since the roast? Look, I worked in luxury hotels for 10 years, in VIP services to be exact. I know the level of scrutiny that goes into high-profile stays and events. I dealt with celebrities, heads of states, royalty. Areas of the hotel get cut off to the public. General employee access becomes restricted. Heavy security is implemented, and unauthorized movement is impossible.
So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28.
So when Trump's team says that he will serve a third term, what lengths do you think they would go to make it happen? Or maybe they just want to get around the lawsuits over the ballroom. But I want you to remember that two things can be true at the same time. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you in the next video. If you'd like to see some more, there's a video here. I don't know what it is, but YouTube says you'll like it, so give it a click. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.